Okay, my friends, they're trying to figure out why the solar corona is millions of degrees and the sun itself is only tops 10,000. So it's 10,000 here and millions out here. How could that possibly be? They say the reason behind the high temperature is still a mystery. I say no, it is not a mystery. It is the particles in space that we're scrubbing through, just like the sun, exactly like the Earth. And they say this. The solar wind. Well, what is a wind? How could it have a wind in nothingness? Emerging from this region passes through interplanetary space, which is supposed to be a vacuum when there's nothing. Well, what's passing through there? And forms the magnetosphere of the planets. That means those solar polar particles passing by as we spin through them charges our Earth up. That's the issue. All right, every day. This just came in minutes ago, 3rd of March. 2022, nothing that they thought it was right. And it keeps coming out with this. They realize, secondly, the loops are, firstly, this doesn't work. Secondly, this doesn't, the corona loops look like these iron loops. Well, I could show you all this stuff with our light research. And this study reminds us, as scientists, we must always question our assumptions, and that sometimes our intuition can work against us. And I'm going to contact this person and say, yes, I agree with that. Please look at my research. This one just came out a couple of days before that. Major UN climate change report was just approved by 200 nations. They don't even know why the climate is changing. All right, I can absolutely prove that we can see these particles. And they said from 2014, these apps and these smartphones basically transforms the phone into a high energy particle detector. Exactly. And these particles are smaller than atoms. It uses the same principles as the very large experiments, which are the head-on colliders. Cosmic rays are energetic subatomic particles. When the particles crash into Earth's atmosphere, they create showers of secondary particles called muons. I'll show you the muons because we created them right here on Earth. And this goes back to 2014. So don't come up and start bullying me about this smartphone being able to see these things. I have a couple of trolls that keep bothering me every single time, and I'm just going to block them. So I'm done with this nonsense of people just dismissing reality. You know, I'm sorry about that outburst, but I've been asking for a discussion, and they keep coming up saying, obviously nobody will talk to you because you're just an idiot saying you can see things that nobody else can see. Well, yes, we can because nobody else will look. All right, once again, I don't mean to be nasty, but I'll tell you, I just had the worst encounter yesterday with the most foolish people you could ever imagine that thought they knew everything about everything. Just, no, we don't want to see it because we're too smart to look at it. Well, this is light, and this light is beginning to accelerate. Therefore, it begins to manifest itself as the wave that precedes the particle, and that's the particle. Now, I hope you can see that. And I can show you it is accelerating. That wave is obviously, this is an acceleration, and what is accelerating is the particle, and then the particle divides here. That's called fission, and this is fusion, and the muons and the electron neutrinos will be seen by you in a second. And this is the particle. You see the black and white particle? This is exactly what they wanted to see from CERN, and they wanted to be able to see those divide, which they have seen in their gigantic particle accelerator. They had no idea where it came from. Here's where it came from. Here's that black ball and the white ball. Well, the white shower came through this little tiny slit, which is a venturi, that only allowed the white through. The black has to go around. It's too big. It's too big and it's solid and it's hard as a rock. There is no emission, no absorption, no reflection, and no compression. These can compress. I can show you that as well. We did our homework, not them. And they're the ones that are telling you what you have to believe. That's that particle coming from light. That is not a big heavy-duty atom. That is no proton. That is the particles that make up protons. Protons are made out of 1,839 of electrons. That's an electron, that's an electron. Back to back, they make a photon. Photons bounce. Electrons by themselves burn into you. It's called static lightning electricity. This is light. This is light passing through the air. This is like concussing with particles that make it glow brighter, and this is the squishy part, is the white that can squirt through that venturi. This is what light is all about. This is what particles are about, and they come from the sun and they saturate the universe. All right, don't forget now, every particle that's coming out of the sun or any luminous body and anything that's glowing is luminous, which means it's sending out particles of light. Particles of light are those magnetic particles I showed you. We are scrubbing through them just as everything in space is scrubbing through the arms of the galaxy, being pulled this way. This black and white and black and white and black and white is push to shove, push to shove, push to shove. There'll be a black zone between each one of these white stripes, and that's because this is spinning through all the other particles in space. Those particles are pushing back the arms. They push to shove. That's the glow. The glowiest glow is here. And it's going to be boop, 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 and it's just wrenching this, causing a black hole to form. Black holes are not black. The outside is the white, and this is exactly what every single thing there is made of. And this is just a big, 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 big thing of these particles. We are a smaller big thing in these particles, and the sun is a bigger big thing in these particles, and this is just a gigantic thing in these particles. And we're all spinning through. We're being scrubbed. The sun's being scrubbed. That's what's causing this glow. That's what's causing our heat. Why are we getting hotter and hotter? Why don't we stay the same? Well, they call, first of all, their space weather. It depends on how much the sun puts out. The sun is becoming overcharged because it's going through its phases. There's a minimum and a maximum. I think we just hit the minimum, or I can't remember now, but one or the other we just went through. It's an 11-year cycle, and it depends. That's our space weather. So that should keep us fairly consistent. 11-year cycle. It gets warmer, it gets hotter. It does this, it does that. Well, why? It's because the gases that surround our atmosphere are at, let's say, 1 inch out. Let's just say it's 1 inch off the surface here. It scrubs certain height. What if you go 10 inches out here? That's what happens. And what does means? It means hotter than hell. All right, let's dig in a little deeper. We're talking about the sun's corona. Now, you have to obstruct the sun's surface to be able to see what comes out of the sun. This is a solar eclipse, and this is all the particles and radiation that's leaving that sun. Now, I'm just going to read through this. It says the corona is the outer atmosphere of the sun, way out outside. It extends many thousands of miles above the visible surface of the sun, so it's way out here, gradually transforming into solar wind that flows outward through our solar system. Well, what's solar wind made out of? It's got to be made out of something. That's not a vacuum. Now, the material in the corona is an extremely hot but very thinly, the tenuous means very thin, plasma. And what is plasma? Plasma is the particles I showed you, which is those black and white particles. The temperature in the corona is more than 1,000,000 degrees, much hotter than the temperature at the surface, surprisingly, which is only tops about 10,000 degrees. The pressure and density in the corona is much, much lower than in Earth's atmosphere. So way out there, the density, there's not a whole lot of particles out there, but it's hotter than hell. Why? Why are they not seeing a lot of particles? I could show you this in reality in an atomic bomb. The corona is above the sun's lower atmosphere, which is called the chromosphere. I mean, the corona is above the sun's lower atmosphere, so it's way out there. And it's called the chromosphere, is the lower atmosphere. A relatively narrow area called the transition region. This is the key. That's where it's scrubbing. The transition region separates the corona from the chromosphere. All right, so the corona is the hot part. The chromosphere is underneath. So the hot part is scrubbing against the lower part. Now, the temperature rises sharply in that transition region. Yeah, because you're scrubbing. That's where the tires hit the road. From thousands of degrees in the chromosphere to more than 1,000,000 right there in the corona. The density of the plasma falls rapidly through the transition region, moving upward from the Coronosphere to the corona. That's because where those black particles now are stopping. They're hitting into light, and they're getting pushed back. That's the push to shove. Now, I just want to point out the fact, I've been doing this since 1968 in earnest. I was in the Army, Nike Hercules missiles, and I realized there's no such thing as the Bohr model, totally wrong. There's two types of, it's dipoles to dipoles. Let's just go that way. Everything is push to shove, dipole to dipole. And I did all the same stuff. Einstein, all of them did. Nobody was ahead of me on this. Nobody. Bohr theory, totally wrong. Rutherford's atom, totally wrong. This is what the real energy is. Transfer of energy. Transfer of energy is from light to atomic vapor. That's atomic vapor. I did this, trust me, I know as much as anybody about this. And I've done this ever since a bazillion years ago. And I had just different opinions on everything, but I could not prove them until I can now. And I want it to be looked at now. I deserve that. All right, something causes everything in space to spin. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but everything spins. And the more it spins, the more the arms of the energetic arms of the particles are pushed back. And as they push back, they push and shove and push and shove. I think I showed you this already. This is the galaxy. Now, what are we doing on one of these arms? Are we just sitting out here and just not moving? No, obviously we're going this way, but what else? All right, I'm going to show you something. This is the sun behind the moon, solar eclipse. It is spinning, and you have a south and a north pole. All right? It's spinning this way because this is turning this way, causing impact to create these little red spots. Can you see that? Let me come in a little closer. All right, you see that? Those are the impact ones. So it's spinning this way. And this is the trailing one. It's just, as it comes back this way, it's going with the push. So it's moving this way, spinning this way, impacting on this edge, causing these bright spots. And a lot of particles flowing. Now, what happens to those particles? Normally in a motor, which is nothing more than exactly what we have here, a spinning core with a bunch of magnetic particles around it. As that spins, it creates electricity. And you say, oh no, Roger, that's a motor. You create electricity, put it into the motor, and it spins. That's true. If I put electricity into this motor, it'll turn. But if I turn it automatically by itself, like the sun is doing and we are doing, it'll send out electricity out of here. I've done it, I showed it a million times. This is nothing more than a generator in space, generating electricity. That electricity literally comes down and back and tries to get back in here to make its loop. But a lot of it goes flying out into space. That's the solar wind, that's the solar debris, that's the solar particles of light and electrons that just didn't make it to come back. That's what solar wind is those electrons, and they hit our magnetosphere and cause our magnetic field, because we're spinning through that magnetic field. Let's look at that. All right, here's my claim, is the sun is nothing more than a core spinning inside of a field of electrons, and it creates electricity as it spins. And this is what is the electricity trying to get back into its field. This is exactly the same as we have here, only it's all complete. Now, if I put electricity into this motor, obviously it would spin. Well, what if I spin it by hand? See what it does? It makes its own electricity. See that? I'm spinning into those fields of electrons. Well, we're saturated with electrons, so as we scrub and spin, that's what happens. I spin it this way, watch. Okay, you see it? 1.7 volts. It's over 2 volts. When it's flashed, 1.8 volts. If I go the other way, it goes to go minus. See, it's a minus. See the minus? So this is a generator or a motor, depending upon whether you're spinning it or it's being spun by electricity. All right? And that's how they create generators. It's a very simple process, but it requires a saturation of electrons, which is the magnet, all right, around, well, it'd be this way actually, around this spinning. All right, so here we are on the arm of the Milky Way being dragged forward, and we're all spinning around the sun, but the sun precedes us, all right, and we are also spinning on our axis, and everybody is going in the same direction around the sun, and almost everybody is spinning on the same direction in their axis, except Venus. It's a reverse spinner on its axis. It's going around the sun this way, but on its own axis, instead of a right-hand spin, it's a left-hand spin. And that's why Venus is so hot. It's spinning backwards through all the particles. Venus is like 800, 900 degrees, something like that. We're 100 degrees. All right, so this is literally the issue. All of these electrons, and they are just electrons at that point. Remember they said it became, at that border zone, it became extremely thin, tenuous, but extremely hotter than hell. Same thing with us out here. John Glenn said the particles were 8 feet apart. They averaged 7 to 8 feet apart. I think he said that. And they were brighter than hell. And he could only see them coming in from outside the dark side of the earth as he surrounded, and he would see them being lit up because the sun would light them up. Simple as that. This is where the scrub zone is. And the sun is the same thing, has its scrub zone. Millions out here. 10,000, let's say here, 100 on here, 2,700 out here. In between is loaded with the solar particles, the solar wind, the magnetosphere. And the only reason we're getting hotter, we would stay fine, except we're expanding our gases. So instead of having, say, 100 miles around, we got 500 miles around now. We're huge. And the harder you go, the bigger you grow, the more you scrub. And we're scrubbing like hell. They say it's a combustion gas. Absolutely it is. But it's not CO2 creating a blanket. Nothing's going to escape. It's not escaping. It gets used up. All of this stuff gets used up to create life. All of these particles. They are energetic particles energizing the Earth. But we are over-energized. That's why the atmosphere is... There's lightning storms, every turbulence, it's scrubbing, it's... Rains are forming here and there, droughts are here and there. It's all of the interaction of the land masses with the atmosphere in this extremely turbulent time. And wherever the land masses collide, that's where you have these heavy rainstorms or droughts or whatever. It depends on how the gases are flowing that particular time. They call it space weather. Yeah. Because how are we getting hit? Sometimes when we're being dragged through the arm of the Milky Way, we may go into a blank space, as far as I know. We may go into one that's loaded with particles. The sun emits more particles. Why does it emit more particles? I say because it's hitting a denser place in space itself. We're behind it, so whatever it kicks out, we're going to have to go through. We really got to rethink this global warming thing. And I just did a video on it saying it's totally misunderstood, and it is. And until we understand the atom itself, and the Department of Energy doesn't understand the atom. I'm not kidding you. I'm not kidding. All right, I know it's going to sound insane, but they do not understand the atom at the U.S. Department of Energy. And they're going to tell you what the atom is made out of, and it's not correct. They're going to say the atom is made out of a giant proton and some neutrons that are giant particles in the center, and then tiny, tiny, tiny little negative particles that surround it. Incorrect. They say the proton is one giant atomic mass unit, and an electron is just a tiny, tiny, tiny little bit, which is this size of and it just floats around out here. That's not correct. Here's what the actual atom does look like. And I could show this without any question. And they have shown it too. They take protons, smash them together, and then they see these little particles come out. Well, that's what it's made of. That's why they see them come out of here. All right? It's made of electrons. And what are electrons? They're just like this. There's a black and a white ball. Well, the black balls don't mind being together, so they end up going to the center. And the whites end up going around the outside. That's why we've never seen dark matter. It's always inside. I'm not kidding. This is what this looked. This was what we would see this. And it would glow back at us. Well, if we could get into the center, there'd be a black ball in the center, which would be the dark matter. And it will have one more electron will want to try to get in because it becomes stable at a certain point, and then the white particles are surrounding it and say, okay, no more guys coming in here, that's it. And they say, well, I really want to come in here. So no, you can only stay that far away. That's what's called quantum distance. Hydrogen, it's a certain distance away from the nucleus. And then the more and more protons, which are just quantities of 1,839 electrons together, they're not these things, they're this, which is what we always thought was just this. But they smash these and they turn them into these little particles. So there's no question that this is, it's really kind of silly at this point. And this is what's coming out of the sun. Now, all I can say is we have to get to reality and deal with what the electrons and atoms are really made of. And I'm going to go through this in extreme detail because I've done this all my life. This is not something new for me. I knew in 1968 that the atom was not anything correct to what the atomic model was. And they still know it's not correct. But they have no way to, we're just figuring this out. Nobody understands this. Well, trust me, they're so far off, it's unbelievable. All right, this is their model, just the Bohr model. Neutrons means they just have an even number of these particles. Protons have one less, and it's exactly the weight of one electron differentiates neutrons from protons. This is because they're all made of electrons. Now they say the electrons are just these little bits out here that are negative, and these protons just happen to be positive. And I agree with that because they don't have an even number of electrons. When they're an even number, they're neutral. I can go with that. But the whole mess here is made of 1,839 for each proton and 1,840 for each neutron, and each one of the electrons out here is one electron. Okay, my friends, quick and simple. We are not being overheated on Earth by CO2, and neither is the sun. The sun's corona, way out here, is millions of degrees way out here, millions. And they say the particles are very, very light, but it's millions of degrees. These particles are very heavy, and it's only 10,000 degrees right down on the surface, tops. So it's very cold here, literally, compared to out here. 10,000 compared to millions. On Earth, it's 100 degrees on the surface, 2,700 out here. Why? They have no idea, and they have no idea, it's unbelievable. They have no idea what causes this at the corona. The reason behind the high temperature of the solar corona is still a mystery. The solar wind, think about this now, emerging from this region passes through the interplanetary space, which is supposed to be a vacuum, but we have wind and light and all these particles coming through there, and it forms the magnetosphere of the planets because it is polar little particles. And I can show you them. And they call it space. It's a phenomena called space weather. No, it's not. It's the particles crashing across the vacuum, which is not a vacuum of space, and colliding with us. And the sun's surface collides outwards as it scrubs through. Let me demonstrate precisely the reason. And right now, it is not CO2 blanket around the Earth that's causing this. It is the scrub. I've been going over this for 10 years. Nobody listens.